I recently saw an article on the 22 rules that Pixar uses in order to make great movies, and I found that a lot of them could actually be applied to being a sports bettor when you think behind what they're trying to do. So in this video, I'm going to go through those 22 rules, put my spin on what those rules are for sports betting, and see if it's going to be able to help you guys. It's very much around the mental aspects and the tasks which need to be doing sports betting. So let's jump in and go through the rules. So rule one is you admire a character for trying more than for their successes. And I guess after you've been doing sports betting for quite a while, you really do understand that there is a journey involved. And yes, some people get lucky from day one and they're able to make a profit and they seem to do it very easy, but most sports bettors are going to be losing. They're going to lose a few banks, they're going to be trying many different models. They're going to be learning lots of things about what works and what doesn't work. And you need to go through that journey, take those losses, understand when things work, when they don't, to eventually get to a point where you're confident in what you're doing and able to make a long-term profit. Rule two is you must keep in mind what's interesting to you as an audience, not what's fun to do as a writer. They can be very different. So let's look at this when you're creating models or methods around sports betting. So you may want to bet favorites because that's what you enjoy, or you may want to bet your team that you follow and you want a method that's going to work with that. Well, that's not always what is going to work. You have to let the numbers take you to what does work and what doesn't work. And sometimes those numbers mean that you should be on those long shots that you don't expect to win. Because if you can get odds of say 200 to 1 and you find a method that predicts the winner every 20 games, well, you're going to be a long way in front. But you're going to have to get through those other 19 games before you hit that winner. So it may not be fun looking around long shots and trying to find where the value is. And a lot of the time you're going to be looking in areas and sports that you're interested in. But sometimes the easier spots to get profits are in sports that you've not heard much about. The markets are fairly thin. There's high commission rates on Betfair. These are the areas where others tend to ignore, and there's always some diamonds in those areas where people are ignoring. So keep in mind, it's not what you want to do, it's what the numbers essentially lead you to for a profit. So rule three is trying for theme is important, but you won't see what the story is actually about till you're at the end of it. Now rewrite. So applying this to sports betting, you may be looking at a particular area. You may want to look at last start winners in racing, for example, or you may want to look at teams coming off a loss. That would be your theme. You started from a particular point of where you think there is something that is going to work around that you can put in your model, or you can filter around, or you can look at to find some value. But until you actually test it and you put the work in and try many different things around it, you don't really know if it will be profitable or not. So if you look at my case study betting, which I've been running now for 17 weeks at the time of this video, it's showing a profit of over $6,000, but my hypothesis in that was that it would lose. So it's doing something different. So even though my theme was progressive staking and I thought it would lose, the actual end of it is that it's up $6,000. Now, will that continue? I'll continue to test it. And did I rewrite that as I went? I did partly way through. Around test 3, we changed some of the parameters, and those parameters seem to have won every single week since we've been doing the live test. So have a look, test, see what the numbers say, and then look at what those numbers are telling you and see if you can work out a way to use those particular numbers to make a profit and find value. Rule 4. Once upon a time there was blank, every day blank, one day blank, because of that blank, because of that blank, until finally blank. What I took out of this rule as sports bettor is you've got to start somewhere. You've got to be working on it every single day. And most days you're not going to find things. You're going to get a bit frustrated. You're going to do things over and over. It's going to be a bit boring at times. But then one day you're going to stumble across something in the numbers that showed a profit or showed break even. And because of that, you're going to look further down that angle and find a few other things which work. And you might find it across different sports. And from there, you're looking at even more sports and more angles that have a similar theme and a similar idea. And then once you've been testing those, finally you're going to hit that profit. If you keep going at it and be consistent and put in the effort, I would say a minimum would be at least 30 minutes to an hour every day for the next month for you to improve. And that could be looking at data, it could be coding to get data, it could be writing machine learning models, it could be running filters against the data and doing data analysis. It could be watching a sport to see if you can see an angle that might work, but you need to put in at least 30 minutes to an hour every day just to be at the very basic level. A lot of people that make a lot of money in sports betting tend to put in 40 plus hours a week, and that just is the reality of it. That's what you're competing against. So it's about being consistent. If you put in enough hours, you'll find something, and then you can leverage the thing you find across multiple sports, hopefully. So rule 5 is simplify, focus, combine characters, hop over detours. You'll feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it sets you free. This really is about focusing down onto one sport if you're a sports bettor, or to one particular type of sports betting, such as arbitrage or match betting or trading, or looking at the form and taking selections on a game. So it's really about focusing on an area if you don't have the time to spread across everything. And while it's great to be able to look across a few things, sometimes you need to completely focus and finish one area before you move on to another one. So a lot of people get that shiny object syndrome and they see something and they haven't quite finished exploring what they're looking at. So if you're looking at, say, football and looking at the correct score market, well, spend some time, look at it, and that's weeks, not a few hours. Gather the data you can, look at all the different angles. What affects the correct score market? How does it relate to other markets that are there? Don't go suddenly jumping into baseball markets and trying to predict the number of home runs. Yes, they may be similar in that you're predicting a total, but it's not that easy, and different things will affect different sports. There may be some similarities that will give you an area to start to look at, but overall, you're going to find different sports have different personalities in the way they work. So focus on that one area that really gives value. So rule 6 is, what is your character good at, comfortable with? Throw the polar opposite at them, challenge them. How do they deal with it? This is an interesting concept. You need to challenge yourself in sports betting. It may be great to just focus on the sport that you like. Let's say it's cricket or baseball or something like that, and you look at it. And yes, I said focus on things, but you need to challenge yourself in what you look at. So if you're looking at favorites all the time, why not look at long shots? Why are you just betting on favorites? Is that because you need the consistent wins coming in? And some people do. They have a low risk profile. But can they challenge themselves to at least look at those long shots? Can they find things that work? And can they know themselves enough to see whether there is something there that they could bet at lower stakes, or whether it's something that they should avoid, but maybe it'll give them an insight into what works with other favourites. Is there areas outside of sports betting that you should be looking at? So are there statistics books, maths books? Should you be looking at machine learning as a viable option for sports betting? Should you be looking at weather? Should you be looking at things which are hard to get? And the answer is probably yes. You need to challenge yourself. If you're doing things manually, you need to challenge yourself to automate things. Do things that are hard, because they will actually help in the long run make things easier for you. And you'll find things that really work. You may find things in books about politics that work on sports betting, especially psychology. If you read psychology books, they can be very helpful in sports betting. And read other people's opinions. You may not agree with them, but you can have a discussion without it turning into an argument. And after that discussion, try to see if you can justify their points. If you had to argue their position against yourself, how would you argue it? What works in the parts of their discussion versus what you would normally do? And then go have a look at it. Challenge what you're doing all the time. You're not the best at it. You never will be the best at it. You may be good at it at times, but there's always someone that knows more about something than you. And even if they know less, sometimes they raise arguments which just make sense. So challenge everything you do, look at it, think about why it would work, and go from there. Rule 7. Come up with your ending before you figure out your middle. Seriously, endings are hard. Get yours working up front. So with sports betting, why are you doing sports betting? This is what I took from this rule. What is the why? If you end up doing sports betting seriously, let's say professionally, and you're spending 40 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours on sports betting, you'll find at times it gets just as boring as a normal day job. The fun and the joy of it being a hobby where you spent an hour or two here and there, will eventually give way to pretty much ordinary, continuous sameness that just goes on and on each day, where you're looking at numbers, you're looking at bets, you're recording things, you're spending hours looking at a computer screen. You need to know why you're doing this. Is it to get out of the rat race and do it yourself so that you have money coming in? Now that's not easy. Even if you've got good, consistent returns coming in, doesn't mean it will continue on forever. So there needs to be a really good why behind what you do. Now for me, I know that I really want to provide for people, whether that be family, friends, other people that are sports betting. I always want to be there to provide, and that is my why. I want to give them the answers. I want to have enough money so we can do things that we want to do. And that's what sports betting allows me. So even when I'm up at 5 a.m. looking at numbers, going through the bets that happened overnight while I slept, I know why I'm up at 5 a.m. I know why I'm looking at those, and I know that it gives me the drive to just keep going on and continuing to look at new sports, new data, new ways of winning, and putting out these YouTube things to help people. Maybe there's something that just one or two people pick up from what I talk about, and they can apply it to their own sports betting. Rule 8, finish your story, let go even if it's not perfect. In an ideal world, you have both, but move on. Do better next time. So if you're creating methods or models that bet on sports betting automatically, you tend to tinker and reconstruct these methods and models a lot. So even if they're winning, you'll probably touch them to improve them. You're always looking for improvement. The problem is, the more you try to improve it, the worse it can get. You may break what's working because you may not understand why it's working really. And you're never going to be able to get 100% strike rate. Yes, there are ways to do things like arbitrage where you can have no risk bets for the majority. But if you're a trader or you're actually someone who puts bets on pre-game or in-game, you can't be 100% certain that the bet's going to win, generally. So it's not going to be perfect. You are going to lose. You need to let the methods do what they do, run over a number of bets. If you start filtering it down and taking out the outliers, you're going to essentially remove things that will be bets that could win, could lose, but the less bets you have can mean that your models, especially automated models, which need a lot of data to find the edge, they're just not going to work. The more you filter it down, you're going to have more volatility in the short run. That's pretty much what I took from Rule 8. It's okay to leave a model not perfect. Get it in, get it running, have bets going on it, learn from it, make another model. Your new model can take aspects of the old model, but keep the old model running, analyze the results, and improve upon it on your next iteration through. You may even want to go a completely different direction, but you'll always take the learnings from what you've done previously. Okay, Rule 9. When you're stuck, make a list of what you wouldn't happen next. Lots of time the material to get you unstuck will show up. So this probably comes down to, especially when you're doing data analysis or you're looking at losers, you know what you've tried. Write down what you've tried. You've looked at certain angles. See if you can see what's common about those. Is it something that 95% of other bettors are going to be looking at? Are they looking at teams that are highly ranked versus teams that are low ranked? Is that a good thing? Probably not. There's going to be very short odds and you're probably not going to find much of an edge in those odds with the bookies because they know that they can give worse odds given that the most of the public is going to be taking those types of bets. So start to look at things a bit differently. Maybe look for what are the good aspects of a team, but what are also the bad aspects? What are things that are going to increase the odds? What is going to make the public not want to bet on those selections? And in that case, if the public's not betting on it, there's not going to be as much money going on. So the bookies and those on Betfair will pretty much give slightly higher odds because of some feature that shows that it's unlikely to be a sure thing. So definitely list what's good and what's bad about a selection if you're trying to find something and trying to find an edge that you just haven't been able to find yet. Rule 10 is pull apart the stories you like. What you like in them is a part of you. You've got to recognize it before you can use it. So we've talked about this a fair bit already in the video. What is the method or model that you're looking at? Are you looking at faves? Are you looking at long shots? Are you looking at a particular sport? Do you need to look elsewhere? But you need to understand why you're looking in those areas. There's going to be something about your personality. Do you have a low risk tolerance? Do you have a high risk tolerance? You want to have lots of small bets or lots of small losses, but you want to win big. Do you like to parlay? There's a whole bunch of things in here that you need to recognize in your own personality. Do you care? Do you chase losses? These kind of things are really important that you need to recognize because they may be the reasons why you're losing. And recording everything is very important. You need to record all of your bets, and if it's automated, that should be easy. If they're manual bets, you need to make sure every bet you do, as soon as you place it, it's recorded down into a spreadsheet and you can analyze those bets at a later time. Once you understand why you're looking at certain things, so I have a low risk profile, so I tend to Dutch a lot of horses or greyhounds in a race, or I look at correct score markets and take a whole bunch of scores. Now, I know I have a low risk tolerance, but it doesn't mean that I shouldn't look at the outsiders. Why wouldn't I look, say, in a football match at markets that have at least 5 goals in them? Generally, they're not going to happen, and if you're going to back those, you're going to lose most of the time. But why not look at, can you back them? Is it something you can do at a smaller stake that is profitable but occurs less frequently? When you recognize what's holding you back and you do challenge yourself, as I've said previously in this video, you can move forward and you can find things that you would have never found before. Rule 11, putting it on paper lets you start fixing it. If it stays in your head, a perfect idea, you'll never share it with anyone. Now in sports betting, this is about placing bets on your selections. You need to have a method and you need to place real bets. It's all well and good to paper trade, but paper trading does not have the emotional aspect to it. What odds you thought you may have been able to get for the amount you thought you could get on may not happen. So if you look at my progressive staking, I can't always get all of the bets to get the dollars down that I need to cover those markets. So it has to wait for markets. So it waits and waits, and let's say it's a $2,000 bet. It's only going on really big football games or NFL games or NBA games where I can get a lot of money down easily. It's not on a under-19s Indonesian world soccer game, right? And if you were just recording that paper trading, you could put whatever you want, but you need to understand doing things in real life have different complications to paper trading. So get in there, do real life betting with small stakes. Bet $1. Bet less if you can. Start with 10 cents if you want. You need to get in there and actually be placing real bets. Otherwise, you're not going to learn. And yes, $1 is not much. You're not going to get the emotional turmoil that you would if you were betting, say, $5,000, but you're also not going to get the returns. But what you'll find is every level you go through, whether it be a $1, $10, $100, $1,000, $10,000 bet, each of them eventually becomes normal. You get used to the value that you're betting, providing you have a big enough betting account, and it will feel the same losing when you start losing $5 to what it will be in a couple of years when you're losing $5,000. That $5 will feel like the world has ended when you lose it, especially if you don't have a large account, so you started with $100. But those emotional aspects are good to learn very early on. So get in there, do real life betting. It's the only way you're actually going to know if things work. So rule 12, discount the first thing that comes to mind and the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. Get the obvious out of the way, surprise yourself. So this is something that I actually have a technique for that I'm going to share that I think people will get a lot of benefit out of. Write down 100 ideas on how you're going to make a profit. 100 angles. It could be anything. I'm going to bet horses that are carrying a lot of weight because the public discounts horses that are carrying a lot of weight. Or it could be I'm going to bet jockeys that are at the top of the table because jockeys that are winning the jockey rankings are riding good horses and therefore should come in frequently for a win. Or it could be football games, I'm going to back the team that has the most corners in their previous 5 games because teams that are getting corners are obviously at at the opposition's end of the field, and it's creating scoring opportunities. If you can come up with 100 ideas, and it is hard, you would need to sit there for a good hour, maybe longer, just writing down 100 ideas. By the time you get to 30, 40, 50 ideas, you've gone through the obvious ones. These are all the ones the public's thinking of. These are the ones that other people are testing. These are the ones that will have no value. Now, once you get past 50, it's starting to get hard to think of ideas. It's a great thing to do. So if you did 100 ideas for every sport, it gets really, really hard. You need to know those sports inside out. You'll need to think about it. You'll need to possibly look at the data and that you've got, and you may need to get new data that you don't have. Maybe you don't have weather data. Maybe weather is something you need to have an idea around. Maybe it's injury lists. It could be anything, but 100 ideas is very, very hard to come up with. But I guarantee you, if you come up with 100 ideas, something from those ideas from 50 to 100 are going to be good. You're going to find something that works. I doubt many people, if anybody that watches this video, will actually do the 100 idea list, but it is a hard thing to do. It's a great thing to do, so if you can, give it a go. I think you'll surprise yourself on how hard it is to do. Now, rule 13, give your characters opinions. Passive, malleable, might seem likable to you as you write, but it's poison to the audience. And what I took out of this for sports betting is you need to have an opinion. You need to know why you're backing something. You need to know why you feel you're going to make a profit and the person on the other end, whether it be a bookie or another sports bettor, is going to lose. You need to be almost arrogant in the way you look at things. You need to think you're better than everyone else. It gives you an edge and a confidence that allows you to argue your points with people. When I say argue, I mean discuss, so that you can get across and convince yourself and others on why things are a good bet. If you can't convince yourself that it's a good bet, then why are you even taking the bet? So you really need to have an opinion. You need to back that opinion. Now, backing it with money is a good way of backing your opinion, but to actually be able to argue out and explain to someone else that disagrees with it is very important. And it'll help you find where the blind spots are in what you're doing. People will point things out. Don't take it as a bad thing. They point things out, look at it, see if you can incorporate what they're suggesting. It'll help improve what you're doing. Rule 14, why must you tell this story? What's the belief burning within you that your story feeds off? That's the heart of it. So again, this is one that goes back to why are you doing this? Why are you sports betting? What drives you to do it? And also, why are you picking a particular sport? There needs to be a bit of passion behind what you do. There needs to be a bit of drive, a bit of grit. It can be a tough gig doing sports betting. You're in a negative expectation game where 95% of sports bettors are going to lose. What's going to make you fit into that 5% that either break even or win? And when we say 5%, it's probably about 3% break even. Will make a very small profit, and you're looking at 2% make a good profit, and it's probably about 0.1% that make great profits. It's hard to get into that 0.1% without a lot of passion, a lot of dedication and obsession to what you're doing. So understand why you're doing it, be passionate about it, really focus on what you're doing, and have that belief that you can be one of those 0.1%. Now, rule 15, if you were your character in this situation, how would you feel? Honesty lends credibility to unbelievable situations. So This is an interesting one in sports bettors. If you ask a lot of sports bettors how are they doing, you will rarely get someone say, I'm up $125 today, or I'm down $620 for the week. What you're going to find is most of them are going to say, oh, I'm up overall, or I'm about break even. Rarely will they say they're down. They don't know. There's no credibility to what they're doing. They don't know their numbers. Record everything. Look at those numbers. Understand the numbers don't lie. If you get a account statement from your bookie or betting exchange, it will tell you if you made a profit or you made a loss and what that number was. Not what you thought it was, and not what you think it is, but what it actually was for that period. Now that's honesty. If you can own up and accept that number, especially if it's losing, it's very confronting to see numbers when you're losing. It's going to annoy the hell out of you if you are losing, because everyone shows up when they are winning, because it's great. You're flying on cloud 9. Everything's good. Every bet you do brings in a profit. Everyone cheers you along, but when you're losing, it's really hard. And looking at those numbers is where the honesty comes in. You need to understand how you feel about those numbers when you lose and win. You don't want to go to extremes. You want to be able to keep your emotions in check to a point, but you need to feed off emotions as well. It's no good being a robot. Being a robot, well, they'll just make it boring for starters. If you've got no emotion, you want to have a bit of pain when you lose, and you want to have a bit of joy when you win. You can feed off that, and it can motivate you to do more. In both instances, it can motivate you when you lose. You don't want to feel that pain of having a large bet go down. So you can learn from how your emotions are affected from your betting. If your emotions are going to the extreme, it means you're probably staking way too much. And if your emotions aren't moving at all, it probably means you're staking way too little. So if you've got a $100,000 account and you're betting 10 cents, your emotions are going to do nothing because your account's probably going to move $1 or $2 in a day. But let's say you've got $100 and you're betting $20 a bet. Well, you're going to get a bit more emotional about that, especially if you're not allowed to add to that $100 ever again. So if you wipe out, that's the end of your gambling. So in that case, your emotions might be very extreme when you get some bad beats and things like that. But emotional control is important. What you want to do is have your emotions in check, and you should be able to withstand any drawdown that is likely to happen from your models or your method in sports betting. So rule 16, what are the stakes? Give us a reason to root for the character. What happens if they don't succeed? Stack the odds against. So what happens if you lose? Is there any repercussions of losing? So I guess when I started, I'm going to go with my story here to kind of give a bit of background. When I started, I put $100 in the betting account, and I said to myself, well, I think I can see a way to make money. I did paper trading before that, which, as I said, isn't a great idea, but I found something that looked like it would work, and I had $100. I have never added to that $100 in the account. It has grown from that $100 into a very large sum that I can now bet with. But the ramifications of losing that $100 was I would not be able to go down this way and do sports betting anymore. I'd have to be just a fan watching sports. I wouldn't be able to have money on it. So there was something on the line that would have impacted me dramatically. So I had to bet really small, and I had to really understand risk management and understand my drawdowns, and I had to cut losses when things weren't working and I needed to relook at things. But having those high stakes about this is it, this is your one attempt, allowed me to really focus and make sure that I was really hyper-focused on the results and what was working and what wasn't working, and being able to adjust to where the numbers went. Now, if you're not succeeding in something, it's not surprising in sports betting, because 95% of sports bettors do lose. So the odds are stacked against you of actually winning. So you don't really need to stack the odds against yourself even further. They're already against you. And being able to tell people that you're a winning sports bettor and you're making a really good profit, and when I say a really good profit, I'd say at least $100,000 a year, that's when you can say you've been successful. So that's when you'll start to get people really interested in wanting to know what you do. It's always a great story when they hear that you're betting a lot of money, and they get really interested in you and your hobby as such. But if you're doing it at low stakes, people will just think you're a degenerate gambler, because they know most gamblers lose and they won't be interested. But as soon as you tell them you're winning six figures, people's opinions change. So there's something to go for. There's a target that gives you a reason to really try to succeed at sports betting. Now, rule 17, no work is ever wasted. If it's not working, let go and move on. It'll come back around to being useful later. So as long as you're putting in hard work and it's focused work, and it's not just got some data in front of me and I'm browsing social media while I'm half looking at the numbers, or I'm watching a sporting event but I'm having a chat in the background to other people, that's really not the greatest level of effort in the work you're doing. But if you put in some hard work and a bit of effort, and you watch the game for things that could turn into betting methods or features that you should be putting into your models, then you're not really wasting your time at all. So even if you find things that don't work, you now know that doesn't work. There's lots of quotes around, one more failure is just one more thing that's getting me closer to success. So keep looking, keep trying things, don't keep trying the same things. You need to at least slightly vary it until you find something that does work. One approach you could take is a bit of a scattergun around a few different ideas that are all different, and then hyper-focus on one of those that is showing the closest to break even. It's just something you've got to put in the work. The amount of work you put in, eventually you'll find something that works. I don't know anyone that's put in lots and lots and lots of hours that don't find something that at least works part of the time. It may not be a consistent profit maker, and that just means they haven't quite worked out when it does work and when it doesn't work, because maybe it's seasonal, maybe it's a particular part of the season, or maybe it's only works in a particular set of odds ranges, or maybe it only works in a particular type of tournament. They just need to do a little bit more work, but if they put in enough work, there's always ways to find profitable edges in sports betting. There are so many different ways to make money. It's crazy. I know so many different people that do make money in sports betting, and all of them do it a different way. So rule 18, you have to know yourself, the difference between doing your best and fussing. Story is testing, not refining. So this comes back to the emotions. You need to know when your emotions are out of control. You need to be able to stop it before they become out of control. Generally, staking is the biggest reasons why emotions become out of control. Bad beats, after bad beat, after bad beat. So it's generally people not understanding what their real drawdown is, and them staking too high, and then they're losing too much of their account on those losing runs. But it can also be winning. Sometimes winning is the worst thing, especially if it happens straight up front. You start to think that you know everything and you up the stakes and you don't listen to people. So I've seen a few people that have won straight up out of the gates and they don't last long term. They tend to think they know everything. They come in telling everyone that they know best. They don't listen to people. And 6 months down the track, they're nowhere to be found because they've blown their account. So it's all about keeping your emotions in check, understanding that you need to learn all the time. You need to put in the work, go the journey, learn things over time, and you'll get there. Sometimes it's about the work ethic that you put in as well. It's no good just being in front of a screen or in front of a TV watching the sport. You should have a notebook that you're taking down notes and ideas in constantly. If you go back in the video to where I said the 100 idea list, you should be working on something like that, adding to it. I probably have thousands of ideas now that I can work through, and I am working through, and I just look for the best of those. And sometimes I just choose random ones. But it's a lot of sports betting comes down to staking and emotional control. If you can control those two things, you're probably going to get at least a break even eventually. So rule 19, coincidences to get characters into trouble are great. Coincidences to get them out of it are cheating. So this kind of goes back to rule 18 where I mentioned that winning early is not always the best thing because you suddenly think you know everything, you up the staking and suddenly you lose eventually. So sometimes it's good to actually take some losses, understand that you're not going to always win, learn to handle your emotions and handle your bankroll so that you don't bust out and that you can build a bankroll. It's easy to bust out a bankroll of $100, $200, $500, even $1,000. You're probably going to be betting too big. The reason being that small bets at those sizes, really, you're not making much of a profit. But to bust out a bankroll of, say, $1 million would be devastating. So why not treat your $1,000 bankroll like $1 million? So it may be good to learn to handle those losing runs while you have a small bankroll, because they're going to be easier to recover from than if you win a lot of money and then suddenly blow it all. And it also comes down to how you analyze. So if we look at this from data analysis perspective, you're going to have outliers in your models and your methods where long shots are going to come up that you've backed, and they provide a big profit that puts the method into profit. But if you actually break it down by odds ranges or you break it down by months, you'll see that the method is a long-term loser. It's just had a few lucky wins. So you really want to be able to assess models without those outliers in there. You need to really take out probably the top 3 or 4, maybe top 10 winners, depending on how many winners you have in a model that you have over a period of time. Probably the top, say, take out the top 2% of your winners and take out your bottom 2% of losses, or 2% of losses to just even it up a bit and see what actually happens. So if it's still a winner without those top 2%, well then you're probably onto something that might work. But if it's now showing a loss, then you've probably just been lucky and had a few long shots come in and it's given you a short-term edge, but that edge is unlikely to remain long-term. Rule 20, so we're getting close to the end now. Take the building blocks of a movie you dislike. How do you rearrange them into what you do like? So there's a couple aspects to this. So have a look at a method that you've got that loses. Why does it lose? What are the building blocks in it that are actually adding to the loss or not adding any edge? So you need to know for every particular feature that you're putting in and any filters you apply to models and methods, is there an impact from that feature that increases either the strike rate or the profit? If it's not increasing one of those, then why is it in there? And if it is decreasing them, then how can you switch that around? How can you take the opposite opinion of that? What if you were filtering down to include horses that placed in their last 3 starts, and that reduces the profit by 2% of your method? Well, what happens if we just turn that filter around? What if we say we only include horses that have not placed in the last 3 starts? Now we're probably going to get the profit slightly increase from that feature. And it's about doing things like that. Now, 2% might not be enough to bring it to profit or anything like that, but looking at each of the features and filters that you apply to any models or the way you go about doing your selections and understanding how each of those impact both strike rate and profit is very important. Because sometimes you might take a drop in profit if it increases the strike rate, because consistency of winning is sometimes more important than the actual dollars won. So sometimes it's better to, let's say you're dutching a few horses, which means you're taking more than one horse in a race. Sometimes it's good to include the favourite just because it's going to win 30% of the time. It's another 30% of the time you're going to win, versus if you didn't include it, you're not going to win anywhere near the same kind of strike rate. And longer losing streaks generally mean longer drawdowns, which then affect your emotions and also affect the amount that you can stake on any selection. Okay, so rule 21 is you've got to identify with your situation and characters. You can't just write cool. What would make you act that way? You need to understand in sports betting why you act in certain ways, and it comes back to the emotional control. It comes back to your staking. Is your staking too big, too small? You want to understand how you really react to drawdowns, and you can't just write, oh, it's cool. It's all drawdown's drawdown. I'd be able to handle that because you're paper trading something. When it comes to real life betting, no, you probably can't handle that. Not unless you're a very high risk kind of person that doesn't mind losing half their account and then suddenly having a few winners. It comes down to how you do actually react in certain ways, so even winning. So if you do win and you then increase staking, it's a bad idea. Increasing staking after winning generally means that you have had some positive variance in your results, and what's coming up in the future is going to be some negative variance. So increasing staking at that point is a terrible idea. Generally, you want to increase staking on a method you know that wins long term, not just on any method. You need to have some confidence in what you're doing with your model or your method. You want to increase us that it's had a bit of negative variance, because that's the time when it will go on its winning run. You need to understand how you would act if you're doing this for 40 hours a week. Could you do this for 40 hours a week if you gave up your job to do professional sports betting? I don't think many people could. It's a very lonely existence, putting in at least 40 hours looking at data and looking at a computer screen and watching sport and watching racing. It's a very hard endeavour to actually win at and make a substantial profit of, say, $100,000 or more. You will get tested a lot during sports betting. It'll bring out a lot of emotions, especially if you're staking incorrectly, staking too much, and even staking too little to a degree, because you'll get frustrated that the profit's not moving quick enough. You need to understand yourself, how you react, why you do things. If you can understand why you do things and how you react, guess what? That's probably 95% of the other people out there as well. So if you understand what causes you problems you may understand what causes other people problems, and if you can understand what causes them problems, and you can avoid it, you're going to be better off than them and suddenly lift yourself into those break-even or profitable punters. A lot of what I talk about in this video, most people won't do, don't understand or don't care or think it's something that they do actually deal with okay. They think they got their emotions under control, and they think they can handle drawdowns, and they think they know when to stake more, and they think they know when their models work the best and when they don't. Realistically, I think 99% of people are really just flying blind. They don't know, myself included at times. I've tried to improve models and completely got it wrong, and I'll do a review of this 2022 where I talk about all the mistakes I actually did make. I do make mistakes. I have emotional turmoil as well. I work very hard on my mental game. I understand how staking affects it to a large degree. That doesn't mean that I still do a great job of my staking. I get impatient, I get frustrated, just like everyone else. I want things to move quicker. I want to make more profit, it's always interesting. You have a $7,000 or a $10,000 week, and it's like, yeah, but I want to make 15,000. There's always more. It's never enough. So you need to understand why you act that way. Why? Because that's how most people act. And if you can understand, most people are going to stake too much, or most people aren't going to put in the work, and you can do the opposite, you're probably going to end up finding something that works and be a profitable sports bettor. Rule 22. What's the essence of your story? Most economical telling of it. If you know that, you can build out from there. So this really is an interesting rule, and it's the last rule in our list of 22 rules from Pixar. And what I take out of this for sports betting is probably going to be the most important thing you can get from this video. It's about understanding why your methods and models work. I'm going to give an example so that we can actually work through this and you can get a bit of an understanding from where I'm coming from. Understanding how a model or method works generally comes down to some kind of human emotion or bias that can be seen in society. So I'm just going to pick a random thing, and I have no idea if this is actually profitable. We're just going to make an assumption it's profitable for this example. Let's say that any team that is coming off 3 losses covers the spread more than 60% of the time. Let's just say that's a rough rule, and that's the result. Why would that work? Now, if you looked at that rule, you could say, well, teams bounce back. Teams need to win after they've had 3 losses. Their coach is getting into them. Their fans are getting into them. They need to get a win. So after losing 3 times, they put in extra effort and they win the game or cover the spread. That's one way to look at it. The other way could be looking at it in that the odds have lengthened on this team because of those 3 losses, and the 3 losses due to recency bias, where the public looks at recent results and discounts results from the past, have led to the odds increasing because of these 3 losses. They could have had 10 wins and then go 3 losses, and the odds will get longer because of that. Or if we're looking at the spread, the point spread has gone to their advantage because of that. So it's about understanding the human psychology and the reasons behind why odds are at certain prices, and whether or not those prices have some value in it because of those biases. So recency bias is a great one. It affects a lot of odds. There is a lot of sports and a lot of situations where recency bias gives an edge. And I don't think people understand that if you just looked at biases that people put into how they make selections, you're probably going to find some edges and some ways, some features to make your models work and be profitable, or your methods to work and be profitable. Why do people think that the weather has lower scores in games? Does it? Is it only certain types of weather? As soon as rain is predicted, the odds generally will jump out on high totals because people think it's going to be a low total. There's lots of things. Now, whether they jump out enough and whether the odds increase enough to make a profit, that's what you need to work out, and you need to find those reasons on when and why. But start looking at biases and you will find something that works. So I'm going to leave it there. I've given quite a few nice tips in this video, and hopefully some of those things, such as the 100 idea list, you do actually pick up on and use, and just hopefully there's something out of these 22 rules that you can apply to the way you are sports betting to make an improvement in what you do, and hopefully turn you from a losing to a profitable bettor, and if you're a profitable bettor, maybe making you even in more control of that profit and understanding on why you're making that profit. So I'll leave it there. Hopefully you got a lot out of the video. Thanks for watching.